This year, he has brought out this album called The Overview. And what we have basically are two epics. Well, let's take a deep breath and really get there as slowly as we can. Don't worry about the audience. I think he does a brilliant job. It's okay. Hamstrings the album a little bit. And sat through a million bands that have two names, you know, like Gandalf's Goat or bloody Elrond's Codpiece. And I was going to listen to it a third time, but when I thought about that, it felt like work. I thought, I can't be arsed, don't want to do that. The biggest one is the perfection dogma. I hear no rough edges. This has been made in a DAW. A recording of us as human beings, because it essentially, the human being that's at the centre of this project that he's put together is not there. Let's switch it off then. Bye-bye, everybody.
But there are times suddenly you realize you're nearer the end than the beginning. And you wonder, you ask yourself what the sum total of your life represents. What difference your being there at any time made to anything. Or if it made any difference at all, really. I don't know whether that kind of thinking's very healthy, but I must admit I've had some thoughts on those lines from time to time.
I'm trying to think of a way to get into this video. I know exactly what I want to do on this video. It's not like I don't know what I want to do, but I'm trying to find a way in. So I thought start it up, and then once you start talking, you can edit the front off. But as you heard, chuntering in the background was the throaty exhaust of a Harley Davidson motorcycle. Did you hear it? And as I looked out the window, I could see this guy, and he'd got the proper, you know, one of those proper 1960s Easy Rider, like bald one, helmets on, and he's got the big leathers on. Sat there on his Harley Davidson. Couldn't quite see the bloke that was riding it, but we would assume, and did you assume, that this guy is probably about 60 years old? So I want to do a review of The Overview by Steven Wilson. I went to see it last night, and I was going to do some video. I didn't come up with much, but what I did come up with, which was brilliant, was an interview with the drummer for Steven Wilson, Craig Blundell. Now, when I say an interview, it wasn't really an interview, because we were chatting. We'd been chatting for about an hour, because I've known Craig Blundell for about 25 years. And when we first met, which was probably, I think, back in 2001, so 24 years, he was in one place and I was in another place. But we were both completely in different places that we are now. And we had nothing to do with prog whatsoever. Craig was just on the way up. He'd signed an endorsement deal, and he had some nice little gigs, but he signed up with my cymbal company. At the time, I was really riding high. He was sort of down here and I was up here, because I'd got the gig with Robert Plant. I'd been endorsed, and I was actually doing my own clinic tour under my own name when I met him, which would never happen now. We had a chat, and had a chat with the cymbal company, and they said, why don't you do some clinics together? And I did, and Craig opened up for me, and we struck a friendship there. And although we don't see each other a lot, now at my age, nearly 60 years old, I see him somewhere that's been there for a long time, and we shared a whole bunch of, it was a journey. We've shared a journey up to this point. So I did feel very proud to be seeing him with not only a brilliant gig, but perhaps the best drum gig there is with Steven Wilson. And so for me, if I review that gig, and I have to say, if you want to know, it was mind-blowing. It's one of the best concerts I've seen for years and years and years. I was just blown away by it. But for me, I've got my personal view of what happened. And then you've got the intention and the performance and the way it was executed to review. But really, I'm seeing it from my point of view, and there's things personal going on to me, as there always is. Now, really, when you do a review, you shouldn't mix those two up, but there's a reason why I am going to on this video. Because I want to try and get across to you the thoughts and feelings I had this morning when I woke up in the aftermath of seeing this concert. And I've always felt when you see something really creatively good, it stays with you, and then you wake up the next morning and it's in your mind. And that's what you're capturing here right now, or I'm capturing it, and you're seeing it. I'm in that process, and the art, Stephen Wilson's art, made me think and feel certain things, and I'm going to try and get those across, because that's the real review. If you want to know how good it was amazing. I will talk about that. But before we kick off, here's a little bit of video of me going to the gig, so it proves that I went, I suppose. Being a very busy YouTuber, as I am, and having a family and a whole bunch of other things, it's quite hard for me to actually get out to see gigs. But tonight, I am going to see Stephen Wilson, the saviour of prog, and he is at Birmingham Symphony Hall, and this is part of his Overview tour. And of course, Overview is his latest album, which is basically just 2 epic long tracks, which have been written not just to go on an album, but to accompany a film which explores time and space. And of course, time and space is about my favourite subject matter. I got my mate Craig Blundell on drums, so I'm going up to see that tonight. I'm going to document it for the channel, see what happens. I've bought a ticket. I'm not on the guest list, so let's just see what happens. Oh my God, what's going on now? Was that me? Did I just honk the horn, or was somebody honking me? I don't know about this chat in the car. I'm not even driving, I'm stationary. Anyway, that's where we're at today. Let's see what happens. I'll see you in a bit. This is Mr. Craig Blundell, who of course is a prog drumming superstar. Hello, I am at the venue, and this is take 2 because I hadn't pressed record, and so I've got to say what I just said again. Right, so let's start again, shall we? Well, I made it, just about to go in to the Symphony Hall in Birmingham to watch the gig. I just met up with Craig Blundell. He's been a mate of mine for about 25 years, lovely man, incredible drummer. And he doesn't do that many interviews, but he has agreed to do an interview, not with me. He has asked for Barry Muggle, so I think there's going to be a Barry Muggle interview with Craig at some point. Haven't been able to get backstage, the security is very strict, which I was surprised at. Being a superstar YouTuber, I thought I would just be able to waltz my way in, as is my want, but my want wasn't wanting today. So the want wasn't working, so I'm a bit deflated, but I'm going to go in. Apparently you can't film it either, but I will try and sneak a bit of footage so you can see a little bit of it, and then I will do a review of this gig, which I am very excited about. Full multimedia experience. This is something else. This is the peak of prog, isn't it? Well, this is the peak of prog. It's got a big sign up saying you can't take any photographs or film, so this might be the only bit you get. So, before the gig happened, I gave Craig a ring and we sat down and we had a big chat, as I said, and he's a right chatterbox. Craig is a right chatterbox. You can't shut him up. And for this very reason, because his mouth just goes and goes and goes, you can't stop talking, he really does not do any interviews at all. So I'm very lucky to have got this. He knows the right thing to do, so he just doesn't do interviews. All he wants to do is turn up to the gig, do the drumming, go home, play the drums. That's all he wants, which I find very commendable. Not like me. you know, who is hunting views and attention all the time, you know. So we sat there, these two drum mates, with him, you know, with the proper gig playing the drums and doing the decent thing of just playing the drums and not getting involved in all this, you know, social media hoopla. And me, you know, trying to tout for views every single day. But that's by the by, isn't it? But because we're mates, he agreed to do a little bit of an interview. And but I've had to cut it down a little bit because he did go on. So this is the interview. This is Mr. Craig Blundell, who of course is a prog drumming superstar. But actually, we have been mates how many years now, matey?
25.
25 years. 25 years. And look, he's a little bit younger than me, but he is... I'm looking a lot older than you, mate.
You are, mate.
Can I give you a kiss?
If you feel like you must. 25 years, mate.
Craig Blundell, everybody. What a lovely person. Yeah, and look where we both are now.
Birmingham.
Me doing terrible comedy on YouTube to scrape
Really
a living,
poor.
and you've got the best drum gig in the world. Look, Birmingham, everybody. I've actually come out the house. I'm with me, mate. It's lovely to see you, mate, and I'm glad I've got you on the channel.
Me too, mate.
Because you are aloof, aren't you? I'm not aloof.
You're not, you're a loafer.
You can't put the internet on without seeing my old
I know.
aged face there. But you want to be interviewed by Barry Muggle, don't you?
I think it's
Well, I'll have to ask him. He might not do it. He's very particular.
Is he?
I think he's going, yes. Right, good. Hello there. My name is Barry Muggle. I'm a progressive rock fan. You're doing an interview. The worst thing is you're doing it in the centre of Birmingham, and there's a bloke in the background. Look.
Is there?
Yeah, he's there.
Oh, no, nice. Yeah.
I've got him in the shop now, you see.
That would be great.
He'll be going on to you about Camel and all,
Oh,
all that
nice,
sort of stuff. All the
nice.
stuff that nobody ever goes on about, you
Love
know.
that, love
He
that.
loves a bit of Camel.
Does he?
Yeah, do you like Camel?
Ah, I love Latimer. One
And
of the
a
gods.
tasteful guitarist, isn't he?
Oh, it's
Very
beautiful.
tasteful.
Very
I think that's enough. I think us creative people, we're all a little bit egocentric. We're all a little bit full of ourselves. We see ourselves as being the centre of the universe. And so I quite like to parody that arrogance sometimes. So the idea that that would be edited down so that you can't really hear anything Craig is saying. And also the disrespect to Craig to do that. I find that quite funny. But why did I do it? Well, I didn't just do it to be funny. When I sat and chat with Craig, he doesn't like doing interviews, and I forced this interview out of him. And then I felt a little bit bad because we are mates. So I thought, what am I going to do? I thought, well, I'll just edit his bits out and just have my bits. So really, the editing of that video is about a friendship that we've had. When I got into the gig and I looked out into this huge audience, you think, oh my God, this is a prog gig. Look at the symphony halls. There's loads of people in. He's doing another night tomorrow. So it just shows that there's loads of people who want to see prog. Oh, this is really good, isn't it? Oh my God, you sat there. Then I start to look out and I can see people that I know, other friends. Other friends are out there. And I'm looking around and go, oh, there's so-and-so over there. Is that so-and-so over there? So if I start with my sort of subjective viewpoint of the gig, this is what happened. I wasn't sat with the people I travelled up with. So I was on my own. There's no problem with that. I'm a grown man. So I was actually, you know, I'd gone off to see Craig. I was walking around the building. I wasn't with anybody. I was on my own. And as I walked around, every now and then someone would come up to me and they go, oh my God, Andy Edwards, and they'd shake my hand. And that made me feel good. It made me feel good that I had some sort of thing that made me special. So I had some sort of fame. Now, this happened quite, and everyone was absolutely lovely. Absolutely lovely. I sit down in my chair waiting for the gig to come on. And then this guy comes over and he goes, Andy, I'm David Wild. Now, David Wild is a guy that's been watching this channel right from the beginning when I had 800 subscribers. He has commented on the channel, and I've read his comments for like literally years, but I don't know the guy. So this guy appears, like, oh my God, it's you. He's from Wolverhampton. We start having a laugh, we chat. It's like we connected like this. Then we start straight away, we're chatting about the jokes and the silliness, but then he gets down to the more philosophical stuff on this channel. We start talking about various mental health things and creativity and all that type of stuff. And I felt quite proud that I was doing that. You know, maybe my life is worthwhile. Okay. Then he went and sat down. So we wait for the gig to go on. Then I had this feeling. I'm going to be really honest here because this is what I want to get across. Then I had this feeling, and I looked at the people that sat next to me and around me because I'm on my own. I'm thinking, well, nobody else is saying hello, Andy, because I wanted more love. Do they know? Do they know? I mean, this guy was talking about prog bands next to me, and I'd played with these prog bands, and I thought I should really butt in now and say, oh, well, actually, I actually play with IQ, and I've done some recording with the guys from Arena and from Pendragon. And yes, and I felt like I wanted to do that. You know, my house is full of many leather bound books. I'm actually a bit of a big deal, see. So, and that's something that I think if you have the drive to be a musician, creative person, we've got two sides to us. We've got the honourable, decent one that I want to push forth all the time on this channel, which is the one that wants to, you know, do some good in the world, be creative and be expressive, be one of the sensitive people. But you want the fame. You want to be able to walk into a place and feel like you're just that little bit above everybody else. So why am I telling you all this? Why am I talking about friendship that goes back a long time? Why am I showing you bits of Bridge Over the River Kwai, you know, with a man of a similar age, wondering whether his life has had any worth? Why am I showing you that? The reason I'm showing you that is because that was the profound feeling I had watching the first part of this concert, which was the a rendition of the overview. Now, if you go back to my review of the album, it wasn't that great. And in hindsight, I realised it was no criticism of Stephen Wilson. What it was a criticism of the music industry and where it is now. I don't think albums are very interesting anymore, so they don't interest me very much. This was not an album. It was a soundtrack to this huge idea that Stephen Wilson had, which involved multimedia, and now he's got a live band playing it. And with the visuals, the experience of the music was completely different. So I could see that prog, in a way, is like me, in that there's some very noble virtues in there, but there's also a sort of want to show off, a want to impress. That's in the genre itself at the moment. I sat in that auditorium and looked out, and it was a sea of people my age. So I am now going to do a review of sorts. It opens up with these two tracks that have formed the album, the overview. Now, as I'm watching it, there's a huge screen in front of me, and I can see there's these incredible visuals, and there's sound actually popping up around the auditorium every now and then. There's this incredible band on stage of Adam Holtzman, who is like the how would you describe him? He's like the dark shadow of Jordan Rudess. He's you know, X Miles Davis, and he's incredible progressive rock keyboard, but with him it's all dark space. It's all in a silent way and churning King Crimson and stuff like this. Grace! 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 I'm trying to do a video. Hang on, you stay there. Grace, I'm doing a YouTube video. Your singing will be all over the YouTube video, okay? I can just keep it down for a little bit. Sorry. It's alright. Where was I? If I keep that bit in, it's because I felt it was relevant to what this video is. And if I don't, then I didn't. Or I might not know. And if I don't know, I will leave it in. Because I think this is the fundamental thing I'm going to try and get across about creativity, and what this got from me. But anyway, going back to the band members, Adam Holtzman, incredible. It's got Randy McStein on guitar, which I think is the perfect mixture of sort of that Guthrie Govan, you know, like resplendent, virtuoso, you know, emotional guitar playing, with a much more sort of art rock, David Torn approach to the guitar. He was great. We had, of course, Nick Beggs on bass, who he's got to be the best prog bass player in the world at the moment. He has the sound down, such a big meaty sound, and then he was playing double bass. He was playing obviously the Chapman stick, and there's a solidity that is incredible with Nick Beggs. But I also think with Nick is he looks like a proper rock star. There's so much charisma coming off him. And the thing with Nick, he knows how to create shapes on stage. This is the ultimate rock star thing. They're all doing it. Steve Wilson can do it, but not like Nick Beggs. Nick Beggs is just creating these shapes. If you had been allowed to take photographs, every shot of Nick would have been incredible. And of course, right over on the left of the stage, we have my old mate Craig Blundell, who has turned out to be one of the greatest drummers in the world and negotiate himself through some of the most difficult time signatures within tracks like half an hour long. He's got clicks going in one ear, he's having to trigger this, and he did it quietly. He did it without ego. I never felt that he was trying to overplay or impress me because he knew I was there. I just felt he was doing the gig, and it was just sublime. And when I came out, everyone was going, that's the engine of the band, isn't it? And I was going, yeah, without a doubt. The overview, it's in two parts. Now, I don't know really what it's about, but this is what I felt it was about. I've talked on here about this idea of subjective and object, subjectivity and objectivity, which is part of this great dialectic that seems to bind the universe together. And when we look out into the universe, and I am looking out into the universe now, I'm looking out to the window and I can see the beautiful trees. Then beyond that, I can see the blue haze of our sky, which is basically the backdrop of space, seen through the prism of this sort of atmosphere of nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen. But I'm looking out into the infinite as I look there, and I am in the middle of it, looking out, but the universe is out there with me as a speck inside it. So this overview, that it's a good name for this. The overview is pulling those two things together, and I believe that another word for the overview would be the sublime, or you could call it affirmation if you were a Gurdjieffian, which I'm not, but I nearly am. So the first half really sort of is, I felt it was the universe from a human perspective. And there was lots of film of people going about their daily tasks, but they were made out of stardust, as Joni Mitchell once told us. So you had this idea of us doing our thing, but we're not quite aware of who we are and what we are, that we are actually in the universe. But it's a human point of view, and there was a lot of quite sort of abstract, spacey representations of mundane acts. And these acts would almost break down into atoms, or almost. So I felt this was like this sort of subjective view of the world that we have as human beings. It is the existentialist thing that drives Alec Guinness to go, you know, was this all worth it? It's that existentialist, subjective, phenomenological view of the world that we have. The first half is, you could say it's progressive rock, but it's a little bit more established progressive rock. This is another big theme that came out of this concert, but only slightly, because when we went to the second half, which was all about the objective, it was all to make us realise that we were a tiny speck in the universe, a tiny speck. It was placing us as we are. And so there's this big explanation of scale which goes on and on until it becomes so unfathomable. Within a few minutes, it's unfathomable, the size, but it just keeps going on, and you go, my God, I can't actually get my head how big this is, how long it's been around, what forces are. I'm just a little speck floating in a speck. So you have this very objective viewpoint. Now, this opens up with a lot more electronica programmed drums. It's a lot more contemporary sounding. It's a lot more not prog, but experimental electronic music. And then it goes into a section of quite quite dense prog. Now, I'm going to tell you what Steven Wilson's prog is, because he gets called a prog artist. I'm watching that gig last night and I'm going, that's prog, that's not prog, that's prog. And there's a whole bunch of other elements in there. There's songwriting elements. He writes essentially a bit doomy pop songs, as anyone would my age would, because that's what the pop songs we had, you know. So he does that. There's lots of electronic experimentation. There's all that bit of Tangerine Dream, but also sort of Square Pusher. There's all that thing going on in there. There is the slow doomy march, which is very proggy, the very Van de Graaff generator, you know, doomy thing. And then the bit that I love, which I think is the bit that they call the prog, which is where they lock into some incredibly dense time signature. It's dark, it's King Crimson-y, it's soft machine-y, and it's Mahavishnu Orchestra sounding, and they lock in, and then someone takes a solo. Craig responds of it almost like a jazz drummer. It's basically very dark jazz fusion. It's what I love. This is why I love the gig. But what Steven Wilson is doing, he's taking these chunks, and aesthetically he's moulding these things into a much greater picture, where these improvisations, these dark improvisations, actually have a wider resonance within the context of what the what he's trying to get across with the music. And I found this fantastic. And I also am very aware it's something I have done and I'm doing now with my own music, albeit on a much smaller level. And to sit in an auditorium and see, you know, thousands of people, you know, in this incredible environment with the budget to have a brilliant light show and the films and the surround sound, and they're all there, and to watch some of the best musicians in the world, you know, improvising their way through not jazz or fusion, nothing like that's cheesy, dark, bitches brew improvisations. And it's been taken out all over the place. And I was going, this is incredible. This is incredible that Steven Wilson can pull this off. All right? Steven Wilson is a progressive rock musician. He's not a songwriter. He can write songs, but that's not where his strengths are. He's flirted with pop music. He's tried to escape prog. His existentialist crisis, which this really is, it manifests at a grand scale in this piece of art. This existentialist crisis contains these huge things that I tried to personify with that little Alec Guinness speech in this video. But it also personifies this idea of being the musician up on stage, having to entertain the audience, wanting to be popular. And throughout the show, once we got to the second half of the show, you know, he goes into Luminol, and that's like almost like a hit record for him. You know, so everyone cheers, they just love to hear it. And I'm thinking, this is bizarre, because it's just all over the place. It's just this mad, it's not prog really, it's fusion. It's dark fusion, but it's getting called prog. And in the second half, Steven Wilson was very funny. He was chatting to the audience. It's funny to see where he's come from, because I obviously I've been listening to this guy for 20 years. I saw him back in Porcupine Tree probably 15 years ago. I've seen him since then as a solo artist when he did the Hand Cannot Erase tour. His vocals have come on, whereas in the early days of Porcupine Tree, people used to say, oh, they're really good, but the vocals are weak. Well, his vocals aren't weak now. He's songwriting in advanced, and also a certain. When I remember seeing him in Porcupine Tree, it was very serious, but he's very, very funny, and he had the audience laughing, and it was at the expense of the audience. It was at the expense of what prog is. And at one point he says, hands up anyone who's been dragged here, and a few people put their hand up, and he goes, I just want to say, you're probably wondering what's going on and why we're sitting here playing no tunes and just playing for like 20 minutes on end, that music is so complex that you can't understand it. And it got a big laugh. And then they had a problem. And this is what I mean by, and I will now leave my daughter singing in the background in, because they had some problems with their keyboards, and so they had to change the set at the last minute. Steven Wilson says, so he said, you'll probably like this because it's going to be more prog. Big cheer. And it was. It was like the most prog thing I've ever seen. Changed my opinion about Steven Wilson. I thought, this guy's way heavier than I thought, because I loved it, everyone else loved it. So there's this strange thing where you've got a huge audience in a big auditorium, and they're hungry for prog. And every now and then Stephen Wilson does a nice song, and he's had a few albums which I know people have been like, oh yeah, I like it, I like what he's doing. But we sat there before, and I go, what's your favourite album? Oh, The Raven That Refused to Sing, Hanukkah Not Erased, but The Raven's the one. We want Stephen Wilson to do prog. He is the saviour of prog. I sat in there, and I've had this now about 3 times with this bloke. I sat in there watching it going, I don't like prog anymore. I'm not interested in this anyway. I'm doing YouTube. I can do whatever music I like. And I walked out going, oh, I might make a prog album. It's inspiring. And that's a great artist. I didn't feel intimidated by it. I didn't feel like, oh my God, they're amazing. I felt like I'm inspired. I'm really inspired by this. And so this sort of, this contradiction of a guy that's like at the peak of his game in prog, boasts about the fact he's never had any hit records, tries to write commercial things, probably because he likes them and no other reason like that, but the audience are hungry. It's like the inverse of the commercial world. He's made this epic which has filled out audiences. He's playing it to the whole, and it's dark and deep and existential. I love it all. I love it all. So this sounds like a glowing review, but it's not going to be, because I've got my opinion at the end of this, of what I'm going to say. I listened to the overview, and as I said at the beginning of this, I wasn't that impressed. It just came by, and I think that's part of the album format. I think that's the albums just aren't that compelling for me anymore. You know, huge live shows with a great big cinema screen up and all that stuff going on is much more compelling. So how do you sell that as a product? We should be able to, but everyone wants to buy albums. Albums are just something you stick on in the car or what when you're jogging now. They're not. They're ephemeral. The big artistic statement needs to be bigger. And when a great artist like Stephen Wilson gets you in that position where he can deliver it, it's still powerful and people want to see it, and they were cheering and they all loved it, right? But when I was listening to the overview, it didn't sound like the album. And this is overwhelming. I got my review right. What I was watching was a band. It was Adam Holtzman, Ronnie McStein, Stephen Wilson, Nick Beggs and Craig Blundell. And they were performing this music live in front of us. It was very rehearsed, and it was to a click in many places, so they have to hit the marks, but there was also tons of space for things to happen. In the second half of the set, Stephen Wilson did a guitar solo that just blew me away. And as I was watching it, I was thinking, this guy's a progger. He's sitting there playing piano, he's singing, he's doing all sorts of stuff. And he's got Randy McStein next to him, who's like a virtuoso guitarist. And here he is with a Les Paul, blowing us all away over the harmonic minor or Phrygian dominant or whatever it was. You know, a difficult scale. I thought, how many pop stars can do this? None. His command of the guitar is really good, but his guitar solo was so good because of his vision and the way he told a story within it. And it wasn't Dave Gilmour. He wasn't doing all that sort of, you know, dad rock thing. He was doing some really interesting stuff. There was another point where he walks over to Craig Blundell and he's almost starts winding him up. And I've seen people do this, but rather than urging him on, he was like trying to get him to play as quiet as possible, and then he was winding him up and Craig was cracking up. The audience were on the edge of their seats, so he was integrating the live performance into this concert, and it was very exciting. It's why I love music. So my big question is, if that is so compelling and he's got a band of such brilliant players around him, why is everybody buffing everything up in the door so much that it's losing that feeling for me? Because I can't hear it on their albums. Everything is too well recorded. The drum sounds are too good. Everything has been, you know, polished and honed. And the truth is, I'm not saying that there's like programmed drums on this album or anything like that, because I don't think there is. I think the vocals have been tuned in. I think there's a bit of that going on. But the point is their process, right? Within all of this, within Stephen Wilson sat there going, what am I? What's am I all about? Look, you know, we're once, you know, made out of stars. We were these incredible subjective things that really can live in the world, and we should appreciate it more, but we don't, because we're in this mundane world. We don't understand who we are and how we sit within the universe. But if you look out, we're actually a tiny speck, and we should never let our egos go out of control. You know, these little worries about whether people know who you are, or whether they think you're a good person, or if they think you're an idiot. All these things are inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. Right, he's trying to say that, But the aesthetic process that exists from the old music industries, yeah, but can we make sure there's no mistakes? Can we make sure that there's no rough edges? Can we make sure that there is nothing that we let through that we didn't consider? Right? That is how it feels. Now, I'm sure there's lots of experimentation with analog synths that they find a bit like that, but the editing process has gone too far. And it's not live. Albums and recordings aren't live. And I mean, they're not alive. And we are alive. We're human beings. And the music was 100 times better. And everyone said it. They said it was so much more juicy. It was so much more heavier. And it just seemed that I don't remember there being so much band heaviness and improvisation. I didn't remember these long solos going on. And he could be because he was extended. Honestly, if you were in the position Stephen Wilson's in, when you do your next album, go into the studio, rehearse this stuff up, and play it live. And what he put out the other day in March, that's the demo for the musicians. Because if I had the choice between listening to the album and listen to a pristine recording in a studio, not a live concert, of what they did last night, I'm always going to go for that second one. This is what is missing from music. There's no heart, there's no soul. And so there's heart and soul in the conception, but there's no heart and soul in the execution. And there was one point in the second half when Stephen Wilson said, he said, we're about to do the most complex track in the set now. And there was a massive cheer, and he goes, what are you cheering about? You can see he was almost offended. What are you cheering about? He says, why are you guys so into some 20-minute sort of complex epic that's got no emotional content whatsoever? And then he got a big laugh, and they said, well, it has got emotional content, and the track started up, and it had. It was in the subject matter. The subject matter's got the emotional content. But no one wants to allow the musicians to express that emotional content in their playing. They want to pin that down. Musicians are pinned down at the moment. They are not being allowed to be who they are. Now, let's go right back to the top of this interview. Review. I'm sat with Craig for an hour chatting, and we've got a history. When we first met, we were doing drum clinics. We were having to both go out and sit in front of drummers and impress them. And that scarred us both. I know this. It scarred Craig and it scarred me. Because you get into a certain type of ego war. Now, what's happened now is that us guys that are old, we just play the drums now. And that was our conversation. You know, in the end, we just end up playing the drums. We do the job. What Craig was doing last night is incredibly hard, and it's not about chops. The audience thinks it's about chops, but it's not. It's about giving Stephen Wilson what he wants. It's about giving the music what it wants, and it's about holding it together, and it's about that emotional continuity, which those guys all pulled off brilliant. Craig's solution to this is to just try and just focus on his drumming and not get bogged down in social media or clinic tours or, you know, loads of interviews and photographs. Just do the job. Whereas I have sort of inverted all that and come out as this sort of almost like exaggerated comedy character who is expressing on my YouTube all this stuff that I know, the arrogance, the silliness, the pomposity, but also trying to talk about the sublime and the creativity. And I think that it was a brilliant gig. I think people get it, and I think that's really hopeful. But we have to move away from the trappings of the music industry, the albums and the tours and all that type of stuff, you know, and trying to get a review in this magazine and trying to do this and trying to do that. And we also have to let the perfectionism absolutely go, because it's just not interesting anymore. That is the small aspect of this concert I came out really convinced. So here I am with no budget. I didn't even bother to go into my studio for this one. I'm sat in my bedroom. You can see bits of mess all in the background. My kids are, you know, walking around singing and making noises. but I've still tried to get across this idea of being me in the universe of a certain age and belonging to a community of people that were in that hall last night, all of a certain age, watching a musician of a certain age expressing what it is like to be that age and to look out into the universe and ponder our existence, which is a very profound and sublime thing to do. And I've tried to do it by the medium of video. Most of this has just been a talking head, but there has been a few other things, some funny things, some other stuff. And I hope I was able to try and join in and just express that feeling too. And if Stephen Wilson does watch this, I hope he realises that we get it. And I hope he goes, God, yeah, that was what I was trying to do. That's what I was trying to get across, is that feeling. And so we return to where we started. Real Andy, that actually hasn't got that much to say, because in the end, all this creativity is just us scratching our heads trying to just get any handle on what the hell this is all about. Oh my God, I've got it. Bloody hell. I know what the secret of everything is. So obvious. All you have to do is
Unlike horses, lead me right away to my world of dreams so far away. Let me run to the sun, to a world my heart can understand. It's a warm and gentle wonderland far away. Stars away, where the clouds are made of candy floss.
affirming, denying, reconciling.